Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee with CISOs from Lockstep Ventures. I'm Katelyn and I'm sitting down today with Aanchal Mittal. Thank you so much, Aanchal, for sitting down with me. It's an honor to sit with you, learn more about your background and what makes you who you are today. I told Rinky and Lucas I have the perfect first external guest for us, and I know it's going to be nothing short of amazing. So thank you so much for sitting down with me and diving deep into the questions here, and I'm excited to kick off with you.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Without further ado, I always like to start on a personal note before we jump into the meat and bones. So since it's Coffee with CISOs, I wanted to ask you, what do you usually drink in the mornings to get your day started? Or is it the same thing in your cup or does it rotate? Walk me through what a morning's like for you.
So I'm Indian and I love my chai. I cannot start my day without a chai. And that has to be made by me. I am not okay with somebody else making my chai. It has to be in a certain way with the right proportions. So yeah, I'm a chai girly all the way.
I love it. What are your proportions like for chai? Like, how do you usually take it?
So if I'm making a cup, it's about 3/4 cups of water, 1 teaspoon heaped of tea powder, which we get in India, and 1 teaspoon of sugar, and maybe 3 to 4 teaspoons of milk. That's about it.
Oh my gosh, that sounds delicious. Maybe I'll go make a chai here. I know Rinky too, similarly, she has to start her morning with chai if she can. And then if not, if she's on the go, she'll grab some coffee on the way into the office. But similarly, she has to start with her chai. It's part of routine. And I think it's important to have those rituals in the morning too, before you jump into the craziness of work, especially in the world of cyber. So thank you for sharing. That sounds amazing. And also, I like to start, before we jump into your current role and the scope of work that you're working on now, I always like to jump back in time and dig through and understand what makes people who they are. So I would love to start with you growing up in India. What was young Anshal like growing up? And were there any early experiences that shaped the path that you eventually took into tech?
That's a very interesting question, and it takes me a very long time back. But I grew up in India in a very small town near Delhi where, all the exposure was quite limited. So we had a very limited number of schools. I went to public school over there. I was raised by a very strong and ambitious woman, my mother. And growing up, I was the only girl in the family because I have two brothers, and most of my cousins are males. So I was like, I was pampered, yes, but I pretty much grew up like a boy. So I was a tomboy, I would say. I was always top of my class. I was a very good student. And I was also good with extracurricular activities like swimming, chess, debates, and quizzes. And so I always strive to be the best, and that's what I had known all the while. Then when a chance came for me to actually pick a stream in terms of career, I was given an option. Since I was a good student, I was given an option to be either an engineer or a doctor, because when you are in a small town in India, you are not very well exposed to various career options that could be there for you. So if you're a good student, you're either an engineer or a doctor. And I am like deathly scared of needles and blood even today. So
Same
engineering
with
was
me.
a very natural choice for me. And I was a like good student at maths. I really enjoyed doing maths. So yeah, that was something which I wanted to do. So I got in the same hustle, started giving all the entrance exams and whatnot. And that was the first time when, I learned what failure tastes like, because I didn't make it to the best exam. And then I decided to just go with an engineering college, which was not the top notch college in the country. So I didn't take it very well back then, because that was like the first failure that I had ever gotten a taste of. But I somehow learned, okay, there is something beyond this as well. So when I went to my counseling session during engineering admission, I was given a choice to choose between, different engineering streams that we have, and I picked up mechanical engineering. So when the counselor walked in, he said, "You cannot take mechanical engineering because women don't do mechanical engineering. It's tough, it's hard, so it's just for men. So I would suggest you take computer science or IT or electronics. That would be the best for you." uh, I didn't like the way he told me what I'm supposed to do in my life, but I
Right.
think I was a bit taken aback and also not very confident because I had just suffered a failure in life. So I just went ahead with that decision, which was made for me. But I think it was for the best because that introduced me to the world of computers. I did not have a computer while growing up. So that was the first computer that my parents bought me when I was admitted to a computer science course in engineering. So that's how my love for computers and technology developed. I was very curious, how this thing works. We had to take different courses, which probably you wouldn't understand just by looking at a physical computer, but what is the anatomy of networks, or even the software and the hardware. So it was a great learning for me. And towards the last semester of my engineering, there was a course on security, but it was very theoretical, so things like encryption, hashing, all of those things that you learn, it was just about that. So I'll be honest, like that really didn't tickle me or give me any indication that that's something I want to do for the rest of my life. No, it wasn't. Because it was just theory, right? You didn't really know what exactly happens and how things happen, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's how I was introduced to technology and to some way into security as well.
I think it's so important at a young age to get a sense of failure because it helps build resiliency and you know, it helps you build determination, especially at a young formative age, to want to try harder, push yourself even more. So, although it felt like a setback in the moment, I'm sure that that was a really important moment for you and then led you on the path to cybersecurity. So, I would say, especially with where you're at today, that it was a success and a blessing in
Yeah,
disguise. um,
absolutely.
and so I know you mentioned too during one of our prep sessions that you moved from a small town in India to Bangalore. What was that experience like? Could you walk me through what that move meant to you, and did that open up your environment to more opportunities?
Right. So I graduated in 2009, and just then the financial crisis had hit the market. So pretty much every company had either frozen hiring or they were like, okay, you can probably join later. So I was one of the very few students who actually had an offer during the campus placements in my college. So I was hoping that I will go and join this company right after I graduate. So I don't really have to worry about applying for jobs or any such thing. But that didn't really materialize because that offer never went through because of the financial crisis, right? So then I had to look for a job, and Bangalore is known as the Silicon Valley of India. So if you want to start your career in computer science, I think that's the best place to be. So I told my dad, and he wasn't very comfortable letting me go that far because Bangalore is in the southern part of India, and where I come from is in the northern part of India. So it's a huge distance. So, but I just said that this is something I want to do. This is for the best for my career. So let me go, and I will find a way, and I will not let you down. So he did. It was challenging because I did not have a job. I did not have a place to stay. I did not know many people over there. And I did not even want my parents to sort of, mollycoddle me or come along with me and help me out. I wanted to do it myself. So I figured things out. I found a place, started applying for jobs, and then eventually I got a job in Mercedes-Benz Research and Development India. And that was a huge win because that gave me a lot of confidence that I could do things on my own without any external support. Not saying that you don't need it and you shouldn't ask for it, but I just did it, and it was a great experience as well in terms of learning how the world works.
I think it's so important to, at that young age, to leave home for a little bit, test things out, even if, it's a few hours away from home, just to see how you evolve on your own. It's really, really important. And I think just some themes that I'm picking up on, just you talking about young Anchal and your determination, you've always had this kind of powerhouse energy of, I can do it. Like, let me push myself, and I want to show you, mom and dad, that I can do it. Where did that come from, or was that something that you were born with, or do you think it was a lot of nurture from home, like from your mom and from your dad?
I think it definitely came from my mom. My mom was a very strong woman. She had good education while growing up. In fact, she brought me up because I was a first child. She never really told me what not to do, even if she knew that I was, you know, going towards things which may or may not work out for me. She would let me make my mistakes and learn from it rather than always telling me what to do or what not to do. And at the same time, my dad was very protective. So, for example, I'll give you like a little anecdote. I wanted to learn swimming. My dad is very scared of water. Like, he's very, very scared of water. So he said, no, my daughter is not gonna go for swimming. My mom said, no, she wants to do it. So let her try. Initially, I was scared. It took me a while to get used to water or used to being underwater for that matter. But she kept me going, She kept coming with me to the pool, and she kept telling the instructor, she can do it, don't give up on her. So she was there as my very strong support throughout. Honestly, the family or the city that I come from, they don't really support women in being so independent. Like, independent women are not very well perceived in a culture like ours. So it was definitely something which my mom wanted to change, and not through just me but also her. While I was growing up, she was taking care of us, she was bringing us up, she was taking care of everything in the house, and she was a businesswoman on her own. So she was a powerhouse, and I draw all the aspirations and all the energy from her.
I love that. Kudos to your mom for trailblazing, especially when, the culture around you and the environment around you isn't conducive to being a businesswoman or encouraging your young daughter to go after her dreams, even if it's breaking out of the mold. So I love that your mom pushed you, and I could tell and I could feel it from you that that's very much instilled in you. And also with the amazing woman leader that you are today, I know that that carries through to your work today. And so maybe kind of shifting gears along that thread, I know something we talked about during your onboarding call for the Lockstep community was being a woman in tech and being a woman in cyber, and, most often being the minority. Could you kind of walk me through what that experience is like being, one of the only females in cyber sometimes, and what kind of encourages you and motivates you to keep going and hopefully pave the path for young women in cyber today that want to get into leadership roles?
Right. I think that's a very interesting point. I think I've spoken to you and maybe a lot of other women, if they feel the same, but that is definitely the case. Like, I have felt every time I walked into a room in a meeting or even a Zoom call for that matter, I am the only woman on that call or in that room. And sometimes, it can be intimidating because you just feel that you're not being heard and you have to work harder and you have to prove yourself at all times such that your voice is heard and your opinions matter. So it's definitely not an equal stage, I must say, although things are changing, and I think for the best. But what I personally feel is, since I have been through this journey during my career, I know what it feels like when you feel like an outsider, or you're made to feel like an outsider, right? So as a leader, I want to learn from that experience and make sure that I do not preach the same thing, right? If I did not like it, I want to be intentional that people who work for me or with me feel protected, they feel comfortable, and they feel empowered in whatever they're doing. So as a leader, in my team, I do not tell people directly what are they supposed to work on. Of course, we work on our roadmaps and we know what the company wants and what matters to us. Those decisions are something, of course, we define as a larger plan for the year. But I give this opportunity to all the people who are working with me on my team or who interact with us in any way, that they should tell me how or what they want to work on, or how can they contribute towards making this goal happen. Of course, I know what I want, but I want to empower them to have an opinion, and to be able to say what they want and do things the way they want. Like I said, they will make mistakes, and that's where I come in, right? I can always guide them through the right path, but this gives them an ability to make decisions on their own and have that choice, have that freedom to do things the way they want and learn their way. So that's how I feel, any leader, I mean, there are different leadership styles, right? But I personally feel this just gives a very good platform for people to grow themselves also as a leader, because they are owning things. They feel a sense of responsibility and accountability for the work that they're doing. And when you give that sort of ownership to people, they feel proud of it and they try to give their best. So I don't really have to go and tell them exactly what they need to do. And also, as a part of this empowerment, you get better ideas, because when I'm just dictating what I want, you know, for the things to be done in a certain way, it's just my thought and my perception, right? Which could be limited, which could be incorrect as well at times. And when you have multiple voices in the room sharing their opinions, I think better and more powerful ideas come out of it. So I always encourage that, as a leader, whenever I'm working with someone on my team or even outside.
Yeah, I completely agree, Anchal. I feel like your leadership style is so important, where you're enabling, you're empowering, but at the end of the day, you're still giving your ICs the autonomy to build and to learn and to grow and even fail. And I think that's really important as leaders, is you're essentially taking off the training wheels and hoping one day they end up taking your role. That's the ultimate goal of leadership, is
Exactly.
they're kind of your succession plan. So I think that's really important. And to go back to how important it is to be a woman leader in cyber, you're also paving the path for other minorities and for other voices to move into your seat, because as you mentioned, it's important to have multiple voices in the room, multiple perspectives, and that's why not only is it important to have women in leadership roles, but also other minorities as well, because one voice isn't always the right voice. And so I love that you're carrying your own personal philosophy into work and into your leadership style. Another thing I wanted to explore, Shawl, was your career move. Back in the day, you were a senior security architect, and then you moved into product management within cyber. So, what prompted that shift, and what did that experience teach you that you still carry in your role today?
Right. I mean, that was actually a very interesting shift, because I had never really thought that I want to get into a project management role in cyber. But like I said, right, I like trying new things and I like to be challenged at all times. So I took that as an opportunity where I would learn something as well. So it would add to my skills while applying my existing cyber skills. So when the hiring manager spoke to me about the role, he himself did not know what this role would look like in the company, because it was the first role over there as well. So he gave me the freedom to actually define it and make it look like what it should be in a cyber world, because this is not a very commonly existing role that you would see across other companies as well. I was very lucky to have managers and leaders in that company who empowered me to take decisions like these and to define the role itself. I'm very thankful and very grateful to them. What I really understood about that role was, it's not just about being technically adept, but I think what mattered more in that role was, building trusted relationships with other teams. So, say, for example, engineering teams or even the infrastructure teams, right? And understanding where their problems are. More often than not, we'll see that, development teams or engineering teams, they work in silos versus the security teams, right? So they don't really have that sort of connect and they don't really know what's going on. So I built those relationships and I took a little bit of time to actually understand what people want from security. And I did not just want to be a gatekeeper of security, but more like somebody who enables people to start doing security themselves. And, as a result of those conversations and that relationship building exercise, I realized that a common existing thread, which I had in all the conversations, was how do I do the encryption right? Like everybody was trying to do it in their own way. Even then, we would come up with audit findings or vulnerability findings which were in the same area. So nobody knew how to solve that problem. They were trying, but they were not succeeding. It was a little frustrating for them because it is technically a security requirement, but nobody, like I said, wants to be told that they're doing something wrong, right? So that was like a very common problem. I spoke to my management and I spoke to my architects, security architects, and I convinced my management that, this is something that we should build internally for them so that they have one less thing to worry about. Encryption or hashing and all of these things, right? These are securities expertise. So let's take it away from them and make it abstract to them, right? So it took a little bit of convincing to get the developers because my team did not have developers. We wanted to build a solution. So it took a little bit of time to get that sorted out. But eventually, I worked with my security architects and an external consultant from Israel. He was a brilliant guy. I mean, he was so smart and his technical chops were amazing. And he was very good to work with. Like he was open to ideas. So we had a very good partnership even in that sense. And we built this encryption service on our platform. And it basically, like I explained, right? I wanted to take away that concern of how should I do encryption from the developers. So they shouldn't have to worry about it. So we made it in such a way that all they had to do was make one API call to the platform to this service, and whatever they want to encrypt or decrypt, it will be done in literally one call. It brought about a huge change in terms of how security was perceived by developers and engineers. They started seeing us more as partners rather than gatekeepers. And the other thing which matters more to business is that all the new instances of vulnerabilities around encryption and hashing, they vanished because everybody started using the same standardized service. We did not have to look for, did they do it right? Did they use the right algorithm? We did not have to worry about it. I think it just taught me that it's important to build relationships. It's important to build that trust. And once you do that, there are always great outcomes.
Thank you for sharing. And I think for most folks, they wouldn't think that a PM role would be a natural shift moving out of an architect role. But I do see that as very, very important to building business acumen and also building relationships too. And I think that role allowed you to zoom out and be able to connect with other teams and really get to the root cause of your team's problems. And instead of, putting band-aid fixes on things like, oh, maybe you would have had a training on how to do it so that there was a standardized way. Instead, you said, no, let's take this off their plates. Let's work with them as partners and let's build an internal solution. So kudos to you for having that insight and being able to champion internally and create a better relationship between the security team and the other engineering teams. I know that's the beauty of having someone in security who's able to zoom out, because most times, unfortunately, security teams do look like gatekeepers. So it's important to build those relationships internally so that you look more like champions and partners. Maybe along those lines, like, what would you say for someone who is trying to build those relationships internally but doesn't know where to get started? Like, do you have any advice for someone who's maybe a bit more junior in the role and wants to become more of that champion and partner? What advice would you share with someone?
So honestly, that is something which I already do in my current work and even in the previous companies that I work for. It's called a Security Champions Program. It's not a new idea, but it's difficult to pull off exactly because of this reason. If you do not have the right relationship, rather trusted relationships with your engineers, right? So if somebody who is, let's say, an engineer and he or she is looking to build these relationships or move to, let's say, a PM role or even move to leadership, there are a couple of things which are very important that you need to be mindful of. You need to be perceived as somebody who's a partner. You need to be perceived as somebody who is trusted and who knows his skills. And you need to be able to communicate those things to the person that you're speaking to in whether it is technical or non-technical way, but in a way that they understand. So for example, right, if you're speaking to an engineer, You can talk to them in technical terms and they will understand what you're trying to imply, but you cannot use the same language or the same jargon to an executive because they don't care about the technicals. They just want the business results and the business value that you are driving, right? So you have to be very flexible around your communication. You have to sort of read the room and know your audience when you're talking. That helps you build those relationships and also build the trust in those relationships. I think the other thing, especially with security engineers, is that, they just look at this a very small part of the problem, which is how do I fix this vulnerability, right? When you're talking to an executive, or let's say if you're talking to a product team, or if you're presenting to the board, for example, right? They don't care about how do you fix the vulnerability. They want to know how is it going to drive the business better? How is it going to impact revenue? Like I said, also understanding that you're able to translate your ideas in non-technical terms to people. And the other thing is also figuring out how fixing a vulnerability, what that would mean in financial terms or in business terms that the business leaders understand. Having that understanding of the correlation between technical and the business value is very important. And how do you do that is you have to start thinking of things like this at a very strategic level. So ask the bigger questions, right? For example, how do I scale security without affecting innovation, right? What should I prioritize in this quarter versus next year, right? Prioritization is important. You can't do everything today, and that's a decision that you have to take as a leader. How does this impact the business tomorrow? Does it really have a direct business impact? Things like those are very important when you start stepping up in roles where leadership is expected. So I think working on these and getting an understanding of how to communicate, reading the room, and then there are, a lot of tools that you can get to actually practice communication. You can even lean on your mentors and, seek support and even sometimes practice with them as to how you want to build into that communication style. So I think that is very important when you are transitioning from a professional to a leader.
Absolutely. I feel like your security champions program should be a staple at every business because it's so important. To your point, you can have all the technical capabilities, but if you're missing those soft skills, you're not going to be able to communicate effectively with the right teams, and that could hold you back to promotions and moving into management. So I think it's so important to hone in those soft skills, and especially in the world of AI where everything is just extremely efficient and you're able to rely on so many tools and resources to do your day-to-day role. I think the soft skills is actually the art form that's going to continue to be so sacred at work. Along those lines of AI, I'd love to just pick your brain. I always love, having these conversations with leaders. How do you think AI is going to impact security in the next 5 years, especially putting like your product security cap on? How do you think the threat landscape is going to evolve?
So I think 5 years is a very long time.
Right. Should be maybe
Let's
one
talk
year.
about what it's going to look like in the next 6 months. So honestly, I mean, AI is reshaping application security landscape entirely. It's no longer just about running a few SAST or an SCA tool and be good and say, hey, we are good with AI security. There are two aspects to how AI is shaping application security as a whole. One is on the application development side. These days, every developer wants to use the newest, fanciest AI code generator, whether it is Copilot or Cursor or Claude or anything, right? Anything that new that comes out, they want to try it, which is good. Like I'm all for innovation, right? What's changing in that sense is that majority of the code is being written by AI code generators. So the speed at which the code is being written is gone up enormously, right? Obviously, the amount of the faster the speed, the amount of code written would also lead to that many amount of vulnerabilities as well. The speed at which application development is happening, security teams are not able to catch up to that because they were not ready for it. They did not predict that something that could write code automatically would show up in a matter of 6 months, and we would need to have to review that code from a security standpoint, right? The speed has gone up in terms of application development, but not in terms of security teams being equipped with identifying security problems. What really happens is, right, we should always let innovation take place, because that's how we grow as a community and as a race, right? But at the same time, we need to be mindful of where the risks lie with the advent of this security, right? AI security. So we see like every company wants to start using new AI models, new LLMs, new AI applications, but they are not really thinking about if there is any risk that comes into play with that advancement in their technology stack, right? What as an application security engineer, or as a product security leader, what I am thinking is that we need to be mindful of the fact that if the development is happening fast, security needs to be equally fast. And how can you accomplish that is when you are living where the development is happening. So you need to be proactive, and you need to be able to plug in all the security tools and processes right at the left side of the development cycle, which is what we call shift left. You need to be able to make sure that every piece of code which an AI is generating is following a certain security pattern or a certain security framework, that by default they are writing secure code. So that in that sense, what happens is that you are not waiting till the end to be able to verify that the code written by an AI, was it secure or not, or can it actually cause a compromise to the quality of the product, right? That's one thing which, as security, we need to think about. And then there is another angle, right? Another angle is application development was going fast, yes, but the attackers are going even faster. Things which took very long earlier for attackers to actually identify zero-day attacks, or any sort of attack patterns, that has become much, much faster and cheaper and easy to do. So let's say if there was a script kiddie who was writing a small script to be able to exploit something, now they have AI to their advantage, right? They can actually automate a lot of things that they don't know, and yet be able to identify and exploit, which could be much worse than what they could have done just with their script kidding skills, right? Also, I mean, think about this. Earlier, it used to take a very long time if we had to do discovery or reconnaissance to even be able to identify where could a potential flaw be that can be exploited. With AI, that has become very fast. The attackers are moving faster. The payloads are becoming cheaper, and they're able to actually create attack vectors at a very large scale. And again, security needs to keep up with that, because the speed and the cost has really gone down, and security is not ready for it. I think there are some basic things which any security professional can do, and this is an industry wide problem. It's not a problem that maybe just my company or I am facing. I'm hearing it from industry, that they are also in the same boat. And what I personally feel is that at least we need to be aware of where our weak points could be. So, say for example, the AI code development is a very clear area wherein there could be certain controls and frameworks that can be put in place. Then we also need to be mindful of the fact that there are a lot of AI specific risks which have showed up, which were not there earlier, which AppSec was not really prepared to deal with. Things like prompt injection, model poisoning, data leak from the AI responses themselves. A lot of these things, application security tools were not designed to do. So now we need to think about, okay, how do we create a threat modeling process that counters for these AI related threats in their threat models, and then create controls and frameworks around them. So it's a very multifaceted problem. It's an ever developing problem. So when you said 5 years, I think we need to think of a very short term right now, because the speed at which things are changing, it's unfathomable. And none of us have seen such a drastic shift in the entire landscape of application development and application security combined. I think those are the things which we can sort of look at.
I feel like 5 years in AI terms would be 50 years. So I think 5 months is the right scope to think about it. And thank you so much, Ansha. I learned so much just from your explanation of where you're looking at those pieces in your day to day. And also, I wanted to touch on that point you shared where it's not just what you're working on with your team at your company. This is a global issue and something that's very important for communities to talk about. That's why, we built the Lockstep community too, is for you all to ask questions, to share ideas and share some thought leadership on this. So I really appreciate you walking me through how you're tackling that internally. And I know we're almost coming up on time here, so I did want to maybe shift gears and ask a couple more personal questions to wrap. One being, I know you made the move from Bangalore to Dublin, Ireland. What was that transition like for you personally? Because I know you mentioned you moved from a small town to Bangalore and then now Bangalore to Dublin. Seems like a big jump, but was that a big jump for you? Was that something that you did for work? And kind of just walk me through what that transition was like.
Sure. It was actually a very interesting time. So it wasn't planned. Let me just tell you, it wasn't planned. It was absolutely a surprise. I was very happy with my job. I was learning something new every day. I was expecting a promotion. My managers were absolute angels. Like, they were behind me in everything I did. So I was very happy. I had just bought my first house in Bangalore. So I had absolutely no plans of moving out of Bangalore. And then one day, out of nowhere, I see an email in my LinkedIn, which was from a talent recruiter from Riot Games reaching out to me saying that, we are hiring security engineers in Ireland. At first I was skeptical. I'm like, is this spam or something? And I had not heard of Riot Games. I'm not a gamer. So reached out to my then partner, now husband. Do you know about Riot Games? And he's like, yeah, what happened? They are the company that makes League of Legends. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I told him, and then he was like, I think you should give it a shot. At least just go have a talk and see what is it that they have to offer. So yeah, I had those conversations. And surreptitiously, my husband, at the same, like, then partner, at the same time, he got a call from one of his friends in Ireland saying, hey, you know what? There is a role here which I think you would be perfect for. Do you want to think about it? And we were like, what's happening? Like, I never thought of the word Ireland. So we're like, okay, something is going on, the universe is conspiring. So we were like, okay, let's give it a shot. And we started interviewing, and one thing led to another, and both of us got a job. And then we knew that this is it. And surprisingly, at that time, we were not married. It was mid of COVID. Countries had just partially started opening up. So we were like, okay, we cannot really do like a proper wedding. We don't have the time. There are a lot of restrictions. So we just got a registered marriage. We finished our jobs in Bangalore. We did a lot of, all the packing, then everything to do with the move. I mean, Riot was very helpful and very supportive in everything that we had or we needed in terms of the move. So it was very exhausting, but I think it was one of the best decisions of my life because it was great coming to Ireland. I had never been to Ireland before, and I absolutely love traveling. Like, without even a second thought, I would just jump to another country if given a choice. So I love traveling that much. So everything fell in place. It was not that easy, I would say, because in terms of logistics, it was very exhausting. Everything was getting delayed. So yeah, it was frustrating. But I think eventually it all went well, and we were in Ireland. It was nice because the people here are very warm, and the culture is very nice. They really respect your personal time, which we probably never thought of back in India. There is a great work-life balance over here. So I think I really enjoyed that change in the culture and the way we work. For me, it was a good learning experience as well. And yeah, I mean, I enjoy my time here. I love the people that I work with, and I love the vibe of this country.
I love that story. Who would have thought that your partner, now husband, would have gotten a call too? That feels way too serendipitous to ignore. But I love that it brought you both to Dublin. And I know Rinky had a great time visiting you. That's definitely top 5 on my list.
You
So
have
I
to be
would
here. I'm telling you, I have to show you around.
Yes, you're the first person I will call the next time we go to Dublin.
Absolutely.
We'll drink some. Do you like Jameson or
Yeah, I'm
um,
more of a whiskey person. Yes.
whiskey? Okay, perfect. I know
Yeah,
Rinky.
I don't say that over here out loud that I'm not a big fan of Guinness, but yeah.
That was the other thing I was thinking of. It was Guinness,
Yeah.
but whiskey too is easier to drink
Yes,
for
yes,
me.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Anchal, I know we're at time. I just really had an amazing time walking through your story
Same
and
here.
learning a little bit about, your childhood, what makes you you, and even talking about more practical terms on AI. So thank you so much for sitting down with me. I'll definitely reach out if we're going to Dublin, and then if you're ever in the Bay Area, we can throw back some
Definitely.
whiskey here too.
Definitely. Yeah. No,
Thank you,
thank you for
Anchal.
having me, Caitlin. This was really fun. I mean, I enjoyed recording this with you. And yeah, I mean, all the best. Thank you.
Likewise, I hope to see you soon.
Yeah,
Take
me
care.
too. Bye.